Because the truth, ladies and gentlemen, the truth is that my government, along with the government of José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, have been the cleanest governments in the democratic history of the last 50 years. That is the reality.
Good afternoon. Where do you live, sir?
You should head home now, okay? It's 10 o'clock.
It's 10 o'clock, sir. Time to go home.
That's why I ask you to encourage all friends, all family members and acquaintances to vote. Those who have reservations about voting on the 14th of February should request a mail-in ballot now. It's very simple, it's safe. Voting by mail has been the lever of change in the United States, and I am convinced that it can also be so here in Catalonia on the 14th of February.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
I am fine. Therefore, what I want to say is that I am fine, as I appreciate the expressions of solidarity.
It's 5 o'clock. I haven't eaten. I think that's important too.
Your fear to prison! Your fear to prison!
In the name of Spain and in the interest of Spain in defense of harmony among Spaniards, we are going to grant an amnesty to the people pursued by for the process.
Enough already! Long live Spain! Long live!
Long live Spain!
Long live!
This is the best one. This is very good.
In the beginning, the handsome one. Do you remember that first pretty government, Pedro Sánchez, Dr. Death, the Sonas corrupt Mr. I'm Fine, or the summer song that is chanted at any event where more than 20 Spaniards gather?
Pedro Sánchez, son of a bitch! Pedro Sánchez, son of a bitch! Pedro Sánchez, bitch, son of a...
This is how the public image of our beloved leader has evolved over these 7 years of socialist government. As a period marked by lies or changes of opinion, as he likes to say, where absolutely all the red lines that the regime, now languishing, imposed on itself for mere survival, have been crossed. A guy who appeared out of nowhere and has become the most powerful man Spain has known in at least the last 50 years.
Define Sanchez in 3 words.
Excessive ambition for power.
Well, I think he's a psychopath. 1 word is enough for me. Socialist.
Ista! Socialist Spain! Ista!
Pedro Sánchez is born in Madrid, in the good area of Tetuán, near Nuevos Ministerios. He studies at an elitist school at Ramiro de Maeztu.
Practically as a teenager, he joined the Socialist Youth. Here he meets Oscar Lopez and Antonio Hernando, and then they start being the errand boys for the then organization secretary, Pepe Blanco. Pepe Blanco gives them more confidence, gives them more good things. Oscar Lopez and Antonio Hernando and Pedro Sánchez is left like the foolish child, and there begins the feeling that he cannot be less than the others and that one day he has to succeed.
I knew him when he was nobody. I was then the general director of Fio Televisión, the television of the editorial unit of the newspaper El Mundo, and it was very difficult for me to get people from the Socialist Party to come to our debates. And a person told me there is a guy who has been a councillor in the Madrid City Council who is a guy, I am sure, if you call him, he's eager to appear on television, even if it's a small television and such.
Then they gave him a position as a board member at Caja Madrid, right? He also had his ups and downs there, right? Because everyone was pocketing money without lifting a finger.
And there he meets Begoña and tells her, like, someday I will be the president of the government. I am one in their 20s who tells you, one day I will be the president of the government, and doesn't say it as a joke. Charlotte is apts, Pauca already shows you their capacity for ambition.
Pedro Sánchez is absolutely obsessed with power. He exercises it pathologically, and moreover, like people who are especially insecure when doing so, by adopting the effect of mythomania.
He would have thrived in the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and he would have thrived in the Democratic Party of the United States, and he would have thrived in Argentine Peronism, and he would have thrived in Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party.
And then we invited him to come to our discussion, and he came practically every week. As if one week he wasn't called, he would call you and say, hey, this week you haven't called me. And we would see each other, like I said, every month and a bit. We would see each other there at the Puerta de Alcalá. And then he became president of the government, and he wouldn't answer the phone or ever reply to a message.
Well, guys.
He is not capable of feeling, thinking, or putting himself in other situations.
I think that is his great asset. He endures. He doesn't care about criticism. He doesn't care about pressure.
This guy could perfectly be the director of a brothel or a sauna business. He's the president of the government who is going to affect the lives of all our children.
He has always had an obsession, which is to be the president of the Socialist International. People in his circle who know him have always told us that this was his highest expectation, to lead the socialists on a global level.
Someone who lands today at the Madrid Barajas Adolfo Suárez Samantha Jackson La Pasionaria airport and has no idea what has happened in Spain in the last 7 years might say to you, but man, how can a prime minister be like that? How can someone do everything wrong for 7 years? You must dislike him and be envious because he is handsome, intelligent, and has a lot of money. Daddy
must have done something right, no? Well, let's ask.
Pedro Sánchez, he would have to think about it very carefully.
I would have to think about it very carefully.
A single thing.
Change the mattress at the Moncloa.
I would say to promote the feminist movement, but with feminists not like José Luis Ábalos, who demeans women and on the contrary says he is a feminist because he is a socialist.
I have been thinking a lot about this question. I say, let's see, where can I find something positive, at least so that not everything is negative, and I have been unable to find anything positive.
One must also acknowledge the progress in social matters.
There is no one who does everything wrong or everything right, but there are politicians in whom the shadows weigh so heavily that they overshadow the lights.
It was when they doubled the investment in institutional advertising and started putting money into influencers as well to convey their version of events. There it can be said that they succeeded because they were seeking society's collaboration for something that involved measures like a state of alarm, which was evidently an unconstitutional figure, as later demonstrated by the Constitutional Court. And so to speak, they maintained public order in a complex moment with measures that are, but it can be said that they did it well because the move worked out for them.
Very well. Are you going, sir, or not? Should I mean, no, gentlemen, where are you going? We are signaling you to stop there. Do not continue, follow the officer's instructions.
The only thing I can say, as a Castelliaque, Sanchez has been successful is in deactivating separatism, but at the cost of pardons, amnesty, at the cost of making concessions with our taxes, with the debt of the Generalitat of Catalonia, which was mutualized among the Spanish people. If we are to find something good, it is true that the streets are not on fire there, but of course if you give the other side everything they ask for and adopt the rhetoric of the conflict, which is a false conflict, you perform the charade of the famous Salvadoran mediator who is talking between the parties. Of course you succeed, but because you have made a true capitulation.
To protect the rights of Catalans to vote today, we have already won. Today we have won.
Well, the only thing he has really done well, in my opinion, right? The only thing he has really done well is to hold on, the manual of resistance, to hold on to power. In that, he has demonstrated from the point of view of political analysis of what will remain in history, well, he has made a mark in Flanders.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I appear, as you know, before this chamber to report on the corruption case that seems to involve the last two organization secretaries of my organization, the Socialist Party. After reflecting and listening to many people, I understood that throwing in the towel is never an option. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell the citizens and your honors that I am not going to throw in the towel and that we are going to continue.
Difficult to find something he has done well, because while it is true that thanks to his media outlets he has managed to convey that Spain is going like a rocket, or that his voters might agree with those social advances, the other half of Spain does not and believes it is one of the foundations for the moral and material ruin in which we find ourselves today. But let me tell you a story. In 1993, a very handsome man joins the PSOE. In 2003, he runs on the list for the Madrid City Council. He is not elected, but later enters as a replacement for Elena Arnedo. He marries Begoña, daughter of Sabiniano, in 2006. In 2008, he runs as number 21 on the lists for the Congress of Deputies. The Socialist Party wins 15. He is not elected again and enters the following year as a replacement for Pedro Solbes. In 2011, he runs again, this time 11th on the lists. Let's see if you can guess how many seats they won in Madrid. Yes, 10. And it will be a year later when he returns, replacing, in this case, Cristina Narbona. In 2014, he just reaches the General Secretariat of the party. In his first elections as a candidate for the presidency of the government, he achieves a whopping 90 seats. But he presents himself for the investiture and manages to earn the distinction of being the first not to pass it. But then, when those elections are repeated due to his blockade to prevent Rajoy from governing, he achieves 85 seats, the worst result in the history of the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. They kick him out of the party, but he manages to return, and he would arrive at Moncloa in 2018 through a motion of no confidence against the Galician, taking advantage of a dubious paragraph in the Gürtel ruling where the Popular Party was named as a beneficiary of corruption for profit. The question is clear. How is it possible that a guy like that has made it to Moncloa?
Sorry, he when he didn't have a job was talking with a couple of tax advisors to see how they could include what his partner earned, which she earned because she was in the horn business. But father, he even talked to those who did the let's say accounting and such, the tax declaration. The problem she had was how to justify the income. She said they advised and something. Well, they profited, right? Because they handled the accounting for your dad's and your uncle's sonas.
While I was at the City Hall, a close friend of Sabiniano, Enrique Castaños Villarejo's partner, asked me, please, who had a friend with several venues, and mentioned to me that there were municipal police from the Central Municipal Board who, knowing they didn't have a license, somehow took advantage by going for drinks. Then I found out there were sauna places, both for gays and the regular ones of a brothel.
His father-in-law owned brothels, something that blows our minds, because right now the PSOE's roadmap after the summer is going to be to try to abolish prostitution, when within the socialist ranks there are consumers of prostitution, and even his father-in-law profited for years. I mean, his wife has lived off the prostitution business.
Six. I think there were 6. There was only one gay sauna on San Bernardo Street, very close to Gran Via, almost at the corner of Gran Via. And I remember that sauna was called Adam, the Adam sauna.
Begoña family, not just the father, but the uncle. Was a family that lived off prostitution.
And after 2 months, indeed, deficiencies in emergency exits, etc., were corrected, and they were given the corresponding license, but in a legal manner. And that's when Enrique Castaños, who was then the chief inspector of the National Police Corps, tells me, well, I'm going to introduce you to the person who wants to thank you. If
you talk to the people who were with him in the primaries, his closest team will tell you, they say, the primaries went very well for us. The first ones, those of 14, there was only one thing that disturbed our campaign, which was when the thing about the father-in-law saunas came out.
And he says to me, gosh, how can I thank you? I say, well, in one way, treat the young ladies you have working in your establishments, treat them as well as possible, because many of them, well, they're not there out of vice, but to earn money, and then send it to their countries because they have children in their countries, etc. Man, how can you say that to me? If I am very Catholic, if I treat people very well.
Oscar Lopez knows very well how it was. Ossi was the campaign director for Patxi López. He is given a task. He is the man for the dirty work. Oscar Lopez, he has traditionally been with Pepe Blanco, with Patxi, and now with Pedro. He goes with Villarejo, and they have that information. And there is information from there that has been kept since that day, and is surely still the card that, for example, Oscar Lopez or Patxi López have to remain in their positions. Reflect on this. Does anyone believe that Oscar Lopez or Patxi López are there because of their merits? Does Oscar Lopez really have the talent to be a minister? Is he doing a good job? Does Patxi López really have the talent to be the parliamentary spokesperson? Or are they there because Sánchez owes them some silence?
Because now you are the stewards today. Mr. Oscar Lopez and Mr. Patxi López should be here to explain their relations with Villarejo to get rid of Sánchez.
The issue of the saunas and the recordings of Commissioner Villarejo, and then, well, those audios that have been coming out and those conversations in which it is even described how through those imaginary pieces of information, right, or those alleged, so to speak, pieces of information, well, he tried to blackmail judges, prosecutors, journalists, etc., etc., etc. It's the Spain of the sewer.
What could he have used? The opposite of what his father-in-law had for the campaigns. Well, surely he must have used something, because Pedro isn't stupid either.
During those times, the Commissioner Villarejo was recording everyone too, and the saunas were no exception.
Everything is connected. Everything is connected.
Without Sabiniano being present, Enrique Castaño told me, he says, well, you know we record here, right? And that's where they recorded. He told me literally, here we have recordings of very important people, you know, who come here, well, to their thing.
It puts up doubts. I've seen, is it possible that this information about the saunas was Pedro Sánchez's political springboard? If you had asked me 2.5 years ago, I would have said, man, you're also a bit of a conspiracy theorist and you're a bit off the rails. I say, see, Dax and Nasa Madaras.
Right now, I would have to answer that it's possible, yes. And now everything we already know, and what apparently remains to be known, cannot make us rule out any scenario.
Of course, the prosecution is asking for 9 years in prison. To be acquitted from that is optimistic, right?
Among other things, then it turns out that the guy who lived in our house, who was a guy who worked as an escort, worked at the male prostitution sauna owned by the father of the wife of the president of the government. So what are you trying to tell me? Let's do ourselves a favor and go sunbathe. It's very pleasant at the beach.
Ole, Rafael!
Wait. Hold on a moment. Are you saying that the president of the most feminist government in the history of the universe could have profited from 5 brothels and a gay sauna owned by his father-in-law, and furthermore, in those establishments, Villarejo and the Gordo recorded influential figures to later blackmail them? If Sanchez has not been gaining power in a normal way, it is inevitable to ask the question, because winning elections, or at least without doubts, is not his thing. Has he used the recordings from the Adan sauna for his political rise? It has even been published that those trips in the Peugeot 407 to win over his party's members in the primaries could have been financed with Sabiniano's money and his saunas. And if the money from the brothels is not enough, or the videos do not have the desired effect, there is always the option of filling some ballot boxes behind a curtain or rigging some primaries.
Or 2.
There are things about that federal committee.
This was known by everyone, but it wasn't a rumor because, of course, eyewitnesses tell about it.
Well, I think these 2 hours I've spent locked, as I say, in the hall because they haven't let me access other areas. Well, they show me that indeed a report from the PSOE's Ethics and Guarantee Commission is more necessary than ever.
What I know is that there are even videos of what happened there.
And there is one of the people who is currently under investigation by the Supreme Court, one of the people who has had the most power in the Socialist Party, who has a USB drive with videos where votes are manipulated behind the curtains. So that could come out someday.
The party was on the verge of breaking while voices, like that of Alfredo Pérez Rubalcaba, who is a reference within the socialist ranks, were calling for the country to be unblocked.
When a large part of the executive breaks with him, he rises. And it is true that Pedro Sánchez, one of the good things he has is that he rises in the face of adversity.
The reason or reasons for my resignation are well known. Basically, and in summary, I am in deep disagreement with facilitating the government of Mariano Rajoy.
And he returned thanks to the Peugeot 407, to that absolutely torrential route. He allies with 3 great people who are currently charged in the courts and trusts, completely in 2 people from Navarra, who are Santos Cerdán, an electrician, and Koldo Garcia, a nightclub bouncer.
They were not people who stood out for their brilliance or their careers. No, they were lackeys who served him.
There are many people who say Koldo. They say, well, Koldo was the fool of the movie. They say, well, not so foolish. He was the tough guy, but Koldo, tricking a brothel bouncer is not easy. And Koldo started recording because he knew who he was dealing with.
José Luis Ábalos, an Assis Anela Sansamel, a high school teacher from Valencia, also joins this little route, and the 4 of them travel all over Spain in search of endorsements, in search of support to boost Pedro Sánchez. Koldo even goes so far as to safeguard Pedro Sánchez's endorsements at his home. The level of trust they had.
A neighbor offered him to shower because he wouldn't shower since he wouldn't part with the boxes with the guarantees.
Let's see, sometimes we also create the image, right, of Koldo, Ábalos, Cerda, and him in the Peugeot, and no. That is surely the one who got into the Peugeot the most times is an unknown person. Paco Salazar, who was the strategy director of Moncloa, then he took him to the Madrid racetrack with a huge salary.
Hala proatere asamatun miratzimian back to Moncloa. Salazar is a very important piece for Pedro Sanchez's victory in Andalusia. Let's remember that without Andalusia, Pedro Sanchez would not be the Secretary General.
For I happiness learned testimonial that he rigged even the primaries. In fact, sila samike te akoldo tol Santos Cerdán that they had to introduce 2 votes to rig these primaries and make him the president to the detriment of his opponent Medina. See, Medina has remained silent and says nothing.
And I remember that afternoon in Ferraz when our colleague Estefania Molina, who was then at the National, broke the news that Sanchez had won the primaries, and we were like, she's had 2 whiskeys right in front of us, even though we didn't see her, and she's jumped into the pool. And
no, Pedro Sanchez won the primaries, and we were all left with eyes wide open, saying, how could this have happened?
He personally, knowing Pedro Sanchez's track record, would not rule out that there might have been an alteration of the elections with the mail-in vote. I would not rule it out at all.
That is to say, the problem is not
the problem is the strength, like almost everything in life. No, that is to say, they do not lack the desire. Someone who robs a jewelry store can rob a bank. So if they were capable of doing it and they did it in their primaries, why wouldn't they do it in the general elections?
That he had tried to rig the vote to cling to the General Secretariat of the PSOE that October afternoon of 2016 was an open secret. What was not so well known is that the primaries against Medina in 2014 could also have been compromised, nor that those of his return in 2017, after the trip of the trickster, also raised doubts, especially with the participation census and the phantom members. Today we also know of numerous judicial processes where irregularities, rigging and vote buying in various elections between 2019 and 2023 are reported. Given this, how can one be surprised by his changes of opinion, which ordinary people would call lies, or by miserably getting into bed with the ETA murderers, the Catalan separatists who want to break territorial unity, or anyone who hates Spain?
Sons of bitches, you're worthless! These Spaniards are worthless! They're worthless! They're worthless! They're worthless! They're worthless! Screw them all!
That government would be a coalition government where the problem would be that, well, it would have to accept, for example, that the Minister of Finance or the Minister of Energy Policy or the Minister in charge of pensions in our country, of Social Security, would be, well, a person from Mr. Iglesias' close and trusted circle with little political or public management experience, which would be a Prime Minister who would not sleep at night, no?
Until the elections of April 28th, I think.
That's when Chiche Afomake changes his mindset a bit and completely changes. He liked the power and then gives up everything in exchange for being in power. The first concession is the pact with Podemos. I won't sleep if I have Podemos in the government. Well, he did have them and slept well because he looked rested.
Mercha Ispurua, today the parliamentary spokesperson for EH Bildu, was previously a journalist, a profession from which she was removed for 1 year due to a conviction for glorifying terrorism.
If you want, I can say it 5 times or 20 during the interview. We are not going to make a pact with Bildu, I repeat, we are not going to make a pact.
He, with this discourse of the far right is coming and a progressive government makes a deal with the heirs of ETA and with an interlocutor who was a specialist in kidnapping people, like Arnaldo Otegi, and who in the afternoons forced the kidnap to give them a revolver and made them play Russian roulette. He decides to turn Arnaldo Otegi into a man of peace.
Well, fine. Well.
Spain is governed by people who do not care at all about Spain nor about the Spanish. That is the most relevant thing for me.
Making deals also with people who are fugitives from justice, who have even mocked the state security forces and bodies and Spanish institutions like the Supreme Court when Puigdemont last year came to visit us and fled again.
Now he says, how much time does he have left of power? None. He has no power. All the power is with the Bildu Etara. Puigdemont has it, despite still having some hurdles to overcome, like embezzlement, how they have been classified, how the crimes have been changed to fit the criminals.
It's true how striking it is to have Jessica in the media explaining that Ábalos was her sugar daddy, or Claudia saying that she was forced to show her breasts within the party to keep the position where they had placed her to get paid without working. Prostitutes, cocaine, and stealing by the shovelful fill newspaper pages and hours of television. It's logical, because that sells. But the truly serious corruption goes much further. The amnesty for the Catalan coup plotters, with the always present concessions, governing with those you said you wouldn't sleep peacefully with, or the infamy of bringing the heirs of ETA into the institutions to decide the future of all Spaniards. That is also corruption. Because to stay in power without the support of your citizens translated into votes, you must satisfy all your parliamentary partners, and for that, you need to seize all the state institutions.
Well, once inside, what he has done is put the machinery at his complete service, as many dictators have done in other countries throughout history.
The plenary of the Congress of Deputies has elected the following members of the Board of Directors of the RTVE Corporation, Mr. Miquel Calçada y Olivella.
I promise to faithfully perform my duties as a member of the Board of Radio Televisión Española, with respect for the legal framework, the current legal framework at all times. Thank you.
Mrs. María Teresa Martín del Caz.
I promise to faithfully perform the duties of a member of the Board of Directors of the Spanish Radio and Television Corporation.
Mrs. Esther de la Mata Aguedo.
I promise to faithfully perform the duties of a board member of the Board of Directors of the Spanish Radio and Television Corporation.
In that first cabinet, there were no independent people to rein him in a bit.
The CIS is scandalous, we all know it. The National Institute of Statistics, they also, at Correos, they even appointed Leire as the communications director.
As of today, the government he has, no one stops him.
Indra, the National Commission on Markets and Competition.
But he applies it in an especially brutal way.
They have taken it by storm. And moreover, they have not only placed their own people, but they have distributed positions as advisors earning more than 100,000 euros a year each, which are party quota. They have placed people from Podemos, Junts, Esquerra Republicana, the PNV. No one has said no. No one has said this is a scandal. No.
That we respect the institutions and the democratic process.
Those who have yet to be colonized in this final stage, since the year 2023, have embarked on a relentless battle. Opposition judges and journalists. They want a state for themselves.
Because he has a proprietary view of the state, and he doesn't give a damn about the discredit of the institutions.
Mr. Mariano Muñesa de Cabeda.
Legal imperative kayo, Rona, pamolita rimel, amonita unsida promise to faithfully perform the duties of a board member of the Spanish Radio and Television Corporation with loyalty to the King, and to uphold the Constitution and the rest of the legal system.
The list of public institutions, as well as many private ones that he has plundered since the first day he set foot on the carpet of Moncloa, is endless. The Council of State, the Court of Auditors, the Bureau of Congress, National Commission on Markets and Competition, Renfe Paradores, Cervantes Institute de Correos, National Heritage, Red Eléctrica de España, Indra, Hispasat, Navantia, the CIS, SEPIE, CSIC, the Bank of Spain, Traxa, EFE Agency, Radio Televisión Española, and all commanded with an iron hand. But there is one that is the crown jewel, because of course when they are blackmailing you with taking away the falcon, there will come a time when they ask you for something illegal. And for that, you have been trying to control the justice system for 7 years. Because if you control the justice system, you practically control everything.
Sanchez's pattern repeats. He knows that the only element he lacks to reach a constitutional dictatorship is the judiciary. Whom does he appoint? Dolores Delgado.
How she goes from Minister of Justice to Attorney General.
And why does he place her in the Attorney General's office? Because he needs absolute control over the hierarchical decisions of the prosecutor's office.
It's just the prosecutor's office. Who does it depend on? Who does it depend on?
Yes, from the government.
That's it.
The public prosecutor's office is like the army. It is a hierarchical body, and therefore the instructions given by the superior prosecutor must be obeyed. If a partisan prosecutor is appointed, in this case clearly a member of the PSOE, who has even had government responsibilities, well...
What does he do when the whole case of Dolores Delgado comes up? He sneaks Garcia Ortiz into the prosecutor's office through the back door to destroy any trace that might exist of democracy or impartiality and neutrality in a prosecutor's office that is not of the state, but rather the general prosecutor's office of the government.
The Supreme Court has decided today to send the Attorney General to the bench. Do you think the time has come for Alvaro Garcia Ortiz to resign?
There has not been in Europe, and I believe in the whole world, an Attorney General with that role who is charged with a serious crime of revealing secrets and who still, not even provisionally, has been removed from their position.
We support the action of the Attorney General. We believe in his innocence, and therefore he has the endorsement and support of the government of Spain.
But on top of that, the crime the current Attorney General is accused of is a crime with political purposes of aiding the SOE and attacking the main opposition party. Iar ha feito eso, Texas. Its purpose is the revelation of a professional secret, because the conversation that a lawyer may have with the prosecution to eventually reach an agreement, that is a professional secret. The professional secret must be absolutely and radically guaranteed.
So, something has happened here that breaks all the rules. The chief prosecutor of Madrid must be dismissed, suspended from her duties for being charged. Who has to suspend her? The Attorney General. Who is the Attorney General? Her colleague, who is also charged.
How is her subordinate going to issue an indictment against her? Well, she has issued an indictment exonerating the other, another real scandal, huh?
It's just that who is the prosecutor's office dependent on? Who is it dependent on?
In the Begoña Gomez case, Begoña does not have one defense. She has two, hers and the prosecutor's office. Because although changes in government lead to alterations or modifications in the positions of the main institutions of this country, he has indeed managed to colonize and especially direct attention not to those common bodies of personnel change in a government change. In other words, he has directed all his artillery toward the judicial powers.
So, if we do not have an independent justice system and so on, goodbye freedom.
Dolores Delgado was a prosecutor. So what cannot be allowed is for a prosecutor or a judge to go into politics and then intend to return. Now, Delgado's experience is not the only one. Campo, who was Minister of Justice and was a judge, is now a judge of the Constitutional Court.
He needs a series of instruments to, if someone gets out of hand, out of control, be able to redirect them, and that is the Constitutional Court.
Candido has a very clear ideological bias. He has had it all his life, and there he is doing things that I do not understand, because he could have gone down in the legal history of Spain as a great jurist, and he is going to or is currently going down in a disastrous way.
If there were no socialist constitutional court, the amnesty law could not take place. It is true that Patose A person who genuinely repents for a very serious crime usually will not ask for a pardon. Why? Because if they truly regret what they have done, they understand that they must pay in some way. Of course, here people are being pardoned who have no intention to amend, no remorse, no return of what they have taken, and no cooperation with justice.
There is none of that here. Here is simply a gift because you are one of mine or because you are not one of mine. But I am interested in the vote of your people.
Pedro Sánchez gave us the green light to take it to the Congress of Deputies. That's where the second outrage occurs.
Sánchez Pérez Castejón, Pedro, Yes, Montero Cuadrado, María Jesús.
The deputies of Junts and Esquerra Republicana could not vote due to a conflict of interest and because they were the actual beneficiaries. They voted, and precisely because of those votes from the deputies of Esquerra and Junts, the amnesty law was passed.
Propera parada referendum.
The session is adjourned, and thank you very much to everyone.
The Attorney General of the state, appointed after not being able to place Dolores Delgado, indicted Conde Pumpido in the Constitutional Court, correcting anything that doesn't suit him, even overturning final judgments of the Supreme Court, the Central Electoral Board, Indra and Correos, for who knows if to grab a handful of votes that might be missing in a moment of difficulty. But he doesn't have it all. A handful of brave individuals from civil society, represented in the popular accusations, the UCO, and some judges doing their job, are putting his master plan in check, and that they cannot allow.
The PSOE may have a very well-laid plan, a plan of conquest that can enslave and make everyone lackeys.
But what happens? That sometimes elements arise, the human factor, a man, a brave one, a group of brave ones. Well, and this is what is currently happening with two key elements. The UCO, which has maintained great rigor in conducting its analysis, studies, investigations, and on the other hand, there are the popular accusations.
The main corruption cases in Spain have been reported by popular accusations. What do we have to do, according to Sánchez? Eliminate the popular accusations, Bolaño's law. What I do is I let them report, but I don't let them in the investigation.
That the investigation be carried out simply and plainly by the prosecutors, so it will no longer be a judge. Then, if the prosecutor does not want to investigate, a judicial case cannot be initiated.
The procedures will be filed and dismissed. And because the prosecution will become that destructive judge on whom the judicial police of the civil guard and the judicial police of the national police will depend.
But another point, in case they miss something, is that they introduce a fourth shift within the judiciary with supposedly objective tests that are very subjective.
A judicial political school is going to be created because it will be a judicial political school to include all those judges they decide or prosecutors who need to be in the career. That's it.
That we would truly become a country completely removed from a democratic system.
But today democracy is upheld by 3 or 4 journalists, the UCO, and a handful of judges. If they end that, forget about democracy. We will be not close to Venezuela, as is often said, we will be in Venezuela.
Another question that comes to mind seeing all this is how it is possible that no one has stopped him before. A basic part of that oversight of power should be taken on by the press, and except for honorable exceptions of some journalists, the silence of the others, the sellouts, allowed him to have a very comfortable first term where he took control of almost the entire apparatus of the state, even though we were illegally locked in our homes twice. No matter how much and how serious he has done, if no one tells you, it simply does not exist. In that sense, the media are fundamental for optimal democratic functioning. The separation of powers is essential, and it does not exist. He has taken over the private media thanks to the flood of millions he has distributed in institutional advertising. He has conquered the public ones by storm.
Let's start with an original approach. While Pablo Iglesias had a program on television, Hispan Television, funded by Iran as a propaganda organ abroad, he talked about depoliticizing Spanish television. It sounds like a joke, but that's how it is. They tried to form a provisional board of directors with people as depoliticized as Cristina Falaras and Apardo de Vera, profiles of that typical apolitical type. Thought we know. When they recruited Rosa Maria Mateo, who didn't know anything, she herself said, "Oh yeah, I was in the garden playing with my grandchildren, and they said to me, 'Hey, do you want to come here?' And I said, 'Makasese, okay.'"
A plan was developed to anticipate the possibility that one or several of the headquarters of Radio Televisión Espantosa of Radio Televisión Española might face a significant contagion episode.
Because they called her for 3 months, she stayed for 3 years, and they took control.
No, I don't. There is no precedent, and that's considering that all governments, all without exception, have controlled the public broadcasting. But the obscenity of this government is unsurpassable.
They have done with public television what they wanted, which was to place their opinion makers to indoctrinate people. And it is not fair what is being done with public television, which belongs to everyone and is paid for by everyone, silencing the true professionals, not letting them speak, gagging them, and bringing in entertainment people who only cause a regression in the media and lower the intellectual level of the viewers, who are actually the population of this country.
What does the word dinosaur mean according to its Greek etymology? Giant reptile. That is not correct.
What doesn't reach the public through information comes through entertainment. They don't leave you alone even when you think they're talking about something else.
The journalism as a whole is in a moment of deep crisis, especially economic. What is happening to pay the payroll in the country? They need the government to turn on the hose. That creates a dependency for you. That is a factor that has created a dependency first on the audiences. You take them by storm, and the part-timers, well, you buy them with advertising.
I have never experienced a situation where a government and executive power control so many media outlets with the distribution of institutional advertising.
Whenever you oppose their message to really tell what's going on, they start singing songs about you. When the issue with Begoña Gomez arose, they made a manifesto against us because we were coup plotters.
And my first project, the most important one, the one I believe we have on our hands as a public corporation, is to work to heal democracy.
300 million euros are distributed by RTV among audiovisual producers each year. That's the key.
As they are rewarded with television talk shows in media aligned with people who support the government, and the rest of us are being silenced, persecuted, our credibility is being undermined, and even banned from the media where they have influence.
Could we ask you a question?
How are you going to have to defend a government surrounded by corruption? What are you doing? But what are you doing? How do you manage? How do you manage having to defend a government surrounded by so many cases? But what are you doing? But what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Yes, I'm not saying anything to you, but how are you going to?
We're ending up with a beautiful Spain, huh? And that's even before we've started analyzing any of the many corruption cases that currently have Sanchez cornered on corruption. For most Spaniards, it's dipping into the till and taking the money. But no, that's not the only form of corruption. Corruption is the amnesty. Corruption is not sending the army to Valencia while people were drowning to harm your political rival. Corruption is doing what Morocco orders you to do because it might have information obtained through Israeli software that stole data from the phones of the president, the interior minister, and the defense minister. Corruption is adopting measures dictated by third countries or supranational entities, knowing that it is not the best for your nation or for the citizens to whom you owe your duty.
And as the list is also starting to become endless, let's make it easy and simple. We begin with corruption in foreign policy.
You know that today the Vuelta a España ends our Vuelta, the Vuelta Ciclista a España. And let us express our absolute recognition and respect for the athletes.
Europe sponsors.
Today, Spain shines as an example and a source of pride, an example to an international community where it sees Spain stepping forward. So long live human rights and long live the Spanish people. Let's say it with pride and as an example, which is what we are to the world.
If those who congratulate you are called Hamas, the Taliban, and Maduro, then you need to take a look at that.
The most serious issue is the corruption of the leaders by international powers that eliminates the concept of sovereignty. Antonio Hernando, from Secretary of State for Telecommunications under the orders of Oscar Lopez. Oscar Lopez is a man of Pepino Blanco. Pepino Blanco is the CEO of Acento. At the time, moreover, when the European Union is trying to ban Huawei's access to its 5G networks for security reasons, we are also talking about military security. And they appoint this gentleman as Secretary of State. The vice president of Huawei Spain was Tisa James, who is the partner of Jose Manuel Alvarez. Do you know where Tisa James is? As a board member of Hispasat. I repeat, military security.
That is a constant factor that cannot be forgotten. They are making a fortune, and there's both the current ones and those who governed during Zapatero's time are making a fortune.
Since the year 2015, the Security Department of Moncloa recommends that all transportation and mobility of the person holding the presidency of the government be done by air.
So the trips to the Dominican Republic are not unrelated to the fact that Caracas is 40 minutes from Santo Domingo by plane.
It's the island of the tax haven where there is still banking secrecy, where it is very complicated to investigate without judicial orders because all the flights of the Falcon that have arrived there are a mystery. All the stopovers made by leaders of the Socialist Party like José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. When I arrive in the Dominican Republic, what I find there, apart from encountering all the convicted from the Malaya case who are making investments there after having been released from prison and such, well, I also find Jose Bono, councillors, deputies from the Socialist Party, Felipe González, people who have been granted nationality, the governments there, Spanish leaders.
I know for a fact that José Luis Ábalos wanted to retire in the Dominican Republic.
The fortune that someone like Pepe Blanco, like Pepino Blanco has accumulated, the one that someone like Zapatero is accumulating, or the one that Bono has, can only be explained by this system of commissions, of kickbacks in foreign markets. That is to say, among those money suppliers, the bloodthirsty, torturous, dictatorial Chavista regime has been key.
As soon as they sign with the oil company, okay, half is yours per month. You sign a contract to supply, okay, an oil tanker, okay, every month carrying gross, okay.
I understand that the topic of prostitutes is very entertaining for the reader who wants to be amused, but what is relevant here is what is implied by issues like Coldo telling Ábalos that there is a Venezuelan oil company willing to pay €500,000 in commissions. The serious issue is PDVSA, the serious issue is what the group of people is doing, how it has been gradually introduced into Spain. What that requires is a weakening of the institutions, adapting national legislation to the interest of Puebla so that they can do their business here quite smoothly. And the businesses are with oil in exchange for commissions, with drug trafficking, and with the trade of precious metals.
When did you become aware of Mrs. Delcy Rodriguez's arrival at Barajas Airport, and through whom did you find out?
I did not have knowledge of the arrival of Mrs. Delcy at the Adolfo Suarez Madrid Barajas airport.
Why hasn't a customs service report been made on the luggage carried by the passengers of your plane? Because in case something has been done, do you know if any report has been made about it?
I don't know because now the airport manager has no authority to go over border control or customs control.
Who has it?
The control of borders and customs control is the responsibility of the Ministry of the Interior, in the case of border control through the National Police, and in the case of customs through the Civil Guard.
That is the key. And from there, they weave a system of political influences based on a false populism that really permeates societies that are very economically depressed. The Spain of 2008 permeated like crazy.
When this lady, Juana Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, lands in her private plane at the Adolfo Suarez Madrid Barajas airport terminal, someone in the government of Spain wakes up, calls José Luis Ábalos and says, this lady has sanctions. This lady cannot set foot on Spanish territory. Aparece sa iba. Ábalos had already organized this. Sama was pressuring, and Sama goes to pick him up in his car in a Q7, Ábalos and Coldo, and they show up at the executive terminal of Barajas. Fernando Lázaro published the photos of this lady stepping on Spanish soil when she couldn't, when we were going to get into a foreign policy problem with the European Union, to whom we owe ourselves if we don't owe ourselves to Venezuela. And they took her to a room in the executive terminal with the connivance of civil guards, of police officers who worked there, of police officers who have been rewarded. And this connects to the case of Begoña Gómez, because Begoña Gómez and Víctor Aldama have a common link, which is Javier Hidalgo, son of Pepe Hidalgo, president of Air Europa, and who right now, controls the company in that way. So durante esta era by Europa, celebre during the period of Ábalos, the Spanish airline has serious problems. It was going to have to lay off the entire staff. It needed to be rescued, and it had to be rescued by SEPI, that is the government. Thanks to Begoña Gómez, thanks to the mediation of Víctor Aldama, who becomes a board member of Air Europa, thanks to Javier Hidalgo placing her in Guacalúa, which is, a setup created by the airline to place Begoña, as he gives Begoña Gómez a job. In the end, Air Europa ends up being rescued. Air Europa had a debt with Venezuela, and that debt, they found gold bars in contracts of Delcy Rodriguez with Víctor Aldama, so that's where the three connect.
He's forgetting how to speak English and French because Delcy has become a star of Spanish television and cinema. Delcy Gay is the name of Delcy's novel in Spain, the most famous woman in Spain, Delcy Rodriguez. The future of Spain depends on Delcy.
Delcy suitcases. You had forgotten about them, right? That's what happens when you cover up one scandal with a bigger one. When you are watching this documentary, possibly the current scandal will be that Spain has contracted police and judicial surveillance to Huawei, and that the United States has reprimanded us or something worse. Because the reality of Spanish foreign policy during these 7 years is Sanchez's approach to Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian regime, and Maduro's Venezuela. For the servility towards Mohammed VI and the viral question of what the PSOE owes to Morocco, perhaps some inexplicable decision by Marlaska might have the answer. Because corruption in the Ministry of the Interior also has its little things.
Grande Marlaska is a guy who had a strong image as a judge because any judge of the National Court in Spain has a very elevated image due to the issues the National Court deals with. Really, we got to know him when he appeared in politics. And what reality throws in our face? Well, the greatest increase in violent crime in all of democracy, in homicides, in sexual assaults on women above all, which is the violent crime that has grown the most in all of democracy.
When they try to take away our vocation, and they try to take it away when a heartless person overtake the small boats of 6 civil guards with their more powerful boat. En Wenterbachka, un among the drug traffickers rammed the city visit him of other colleagues without hesitation to prevent their escape. When a man or woman tries to crack open a police officer's head with an axe or with a knife or a stick, or to attack or spit on them, and nothing happens. Instead, they come up with ways to take away even more of our authority to give it to the criminal. Heaven forbid, they also get upset.
Marlaska are what seemed logical in the Ministry of the Interior, which is to appoint people who know what the Ministry of the Interior and the police are about. And the government places a Secretary of State for him who comes from the Ministry of Equality.
My personal and political commitment is woven with the thread of social justice. Without social justice, equality is not possible, and without equality, a truly democratic society is not possible. Equality for women is still a horizon to be reached.
And to achieve equality and freedom for women, we need to ensure the safety of a life without violence.
He knows about the Ministry of the Interior as much as I know about atomic energy. Zero.
Now it has already been charged. The ODF has already been charged. The minister, right? The great Marlaska.
The previous, let's say, major investigative unit, which was the UDF, targeted Pujol, who was a very powerful figure at that time, influencing governments not only in Catalonia but also at the national level. Then the political power elites realized, if it touches him, it can touch all of us, no? Terque, if there's danger, it must be cut off. They cut off and took over the UDF. Have you heard about the UDF again? Never, right? Well,
we have a country that seems to be governed by the CAP or governed by Podemos, or even by a party further to the left of Podemos. The national police and the civil guard today in Catalonia are anecdotal. That is to say, the state security forces and corps are not respected. They do not have the economic funding they should have for research, they do not have the resources, they do not even have the necessary material to act on the street. They are given orders in specific demonstrations to act in one direction or another, not following technical criteria, but following political criteria.
Go, 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 go! We're not doing anything!
You have another question. You hit women! You hit women! You hit a woman!
why was CONSOR dismantled? CONSOR was the first European anti-drug unit that was defeating the drug traffickers. We had a traditional method of confronting the drug trade, which is that every 6 months, politicians prepare a large operation, they seize 50 tons, while on the other side, 500 are coming in, right? But they already have a press conference, some statistics, the government delegate, the director general, the minister, the medals that are distributed, the police chiefs who receive those medals because they have been in charge of the operations. In the end, it's a perfect business.
There is not much risk, not much cost, only political reward. Then 12 detainees, packers, boatmen, assistants.
The real drug lords in their apartments in Paris and their villas in Miami were laughing at us. And CONSOR appears. And they say, no, this is not how it's done. Here, we have to go after related crimes, we have to track where the money ends up, we have to follow the trail of these people's economic power, and we have to reach the head of the Hydra. This is going to take us years, but we will be able to achieve it. It was starting to show results. And when we were about to reach the head of the Hydra, Marlaska arrived and dissolved the unit.
How did they dismantle CONSOR with such a formidable problem as the drug issue in La Linea and the Algeciras and the surrounding areas? It's an unusual decision, but everything is unusual with these people.
Because it is evident that he does it deliberately, but he knows the cost to his image that it entails. So, to reverse that cost, Marlaska goes to Cádiz and sells us the fourth plan against drug trafficking. At a press conference, he says we are winning the battle, says we have sufficient material resources and personnel, enough human personnel. The day after this, drug traffickers appear doing donuts in the port of Barbate. On the minister's return, it was obviously unacceptable. And that's when this chain of decisions begins, which always starts at the political level, ending with a colonel, a general who calls the the officials, colleagues who are at the port itself and tells them they go out there and do what you can, to people who had sworn to serve until death.
And this is the civil guard with that crappy boat. With that crap, with what they have, of course, is what they have here. What do they have? They have nothing else. It's enough, it's enough, it's enough. Damn.
If they kill 2 civil guards, they make mincemeat of them in bar, but you expect a reaction first, much more honorable from the civil guard. Is there any accountability taken? None. The only one who had guts in that whole story was the widow of one of the murdered. The only one. More than the entire force combined.
Coming here to see the joke with that fake boat.
Look!
What a tweetie! What a tweetie! Look, look, look! It ate it! It ate it! It ate it!
They were laughing at them. They were creating waves with their engines around them to mock them. Well, if we didn't have the capacity to board, deter, or stop, what did we do there? We went out to protect the minister's speech. We went out to protect the political speech from the day before. That was the only thing we went out to do there.
Something closely tied to the interior are its sewers. And in this role, Lere Diaz made her stellar appearance not so long ago. Another one you surely forgot, but we did not. A lady who was placed in the postal service and was already pointed out as a possible election fixer. But also, Lere was dedicated, according to her own words, to seeking information on the judges and the UCO officials who were handling the cases against Begoña and the Big Brother, in order to discredit them, extort them, or something worse. But wait, because there's more. Lere handed over a flash drive in Ferraz that, I repeat, according to her, contained the videos recorded in the Ada and sauna of Pedro Sánchez's father-in-law. Where will that flash drive end up? Who knows? Lere, also indicted.
Shall we start now? Do you want to?
Let's all start now.
Lere goes every week to the Ferraz headquarters to have meetings with the Socialist Party, provide them with the information she has gathered throughout the week. She has even traveled outside of Madrid to try to obtain information about the judges who were investigating the president of the government's circle, the judges who were investigating the Socialist Party, and she has even tried to gather information about high-ranking officials and commanders of the Civil Guard who were investigating the corruption of the PSOE, or Colonel Antonio Balas, who should never have lost his anonymity. She wanted him dead, like other people who have also investigated this corruption.
Those recordings indeed are to blackmail judges who are investigating cases of corruption within the PSOE, but they also serve to blackmail the PSOE itself. Why? Without going into names and details, but there is a businessman who has opened cases in the National Court, so there are suspicions that he might have incriminating recordings of the PSOE, and what he might want is for the PSOE to manage to stop those cases, right? And in exchange, he does not make the recordings public.
Pedro Sánchez has always boasted that after the People's Party came to power through the sewers, through the recordings of Commissioner Villarejo, that there was a patriotic police. That is also a narrative that Podemos embraced a lot, spreading falsehoods about them.
With the Popular Party, we lived in the sewers, which were just as horrible, just as unbearable, but they were an internal matter. Now the levers of the state are being used to go against the opposition. These are completely different things. And not only against the opposition, because it has also been against the partners. That is to say, now we are seeing practices more similar to those of countries like Venezuela or Russia than to those of a democratic country. And with that, I am not accusing anyone. It is a fact.
That kind of operatives can destroy a country. They undermine it from within. Why? Because in the end, the ability they have to coerce institutions that are of certain relevance and people who hold positions in the administration at the top of the administrative pyramid who make decisions that affect the common life of all Spaniards is very high. And the problem with Spain today is that there is no state. The state does not exist, there is only government.
I tell you what my fellow countrymen, let's say Seneca told Nero, the power you have over me is the fear I have of you. I am not afraid of them.
Villarejo is not the exception. Villarejo is the spearhead of the model. There isn't just one Villarejo. Villarejo became famous for what he became famous for. There are many Villarejos. These types of plumbing operations, which the Americans call black ops, have been done forever and by all governments. But the Americans, when they do black ops, put high-level people in charge. This government has put a Charo to do those black ops.
Neither will they intimidate me, nor will I renounce my convictions.
The donkey is not alone. The donkey is not alone. The donkey is not alone. The donkey is not alone.
Come on, here we go. Now we get to what you were waiting for, the most recent. Prostitutes, cocaine, money, a lot of money, influence peddling, the usual corruption, the kind from all governments. Well, the prostitutes and cocaine are a PSOE trademark, but you get me. In the last 2 years, several legal cases have been initiated that go beyond Sánchez and involve many members of the Socialist Party. Let's start from the beginning with his own David and Begoña.
Because all this has an obvious political objective. You just have to look at the list of complainants. And for this reason, and advised by my lawyer, I am going to exercise my right not to answer your questions.
Begoña Gómez is appointed as a professor of an extraordinary chair without having any qualifying degree, in the sense that she is not even a graduate.
He appointed her as a professor at the Complutense University, thanks to who her husband is, because she receives the university's rector at Moncloa.
Funds that share through large companies she reaches by being the wife of Pedro Sánchez. Well, there is influence peddling, there could be some kind of misconduct or irregularity in the appointment. But then with those financial means, it is agreed, right? Well, to develop software, a computer program.
It is done with a public contract as well, putting out a tender for 60,000 euros to finance this software.
And that software program developed by these companies, an agreement signed with the Complutense University, well, Begoña Gómez registers it in her own name. That is to say, there may be misappropriation.
He also secures contracts with Air Europa, an airline dismissed by the government. He also manages to get placed in a privileged position at the Instituto de Empresa. Instituto de Empresa is a private university, but it has many ties with power.
I am Begoña Gómez. I am the director of the Africa Center, where we want to collaborate with the new generation. With a view to giving them opportunities, we will allow them to become more sustainable.
Did the president know what his wife was doing or not? This is the fundamental question. If he knew, he participated. And the question is, does anyone think that the president of the government didn't know what his wife was doing at Moncloa?
A strategy of social and environmental impact integrated into the business strategy efficiently and effectively.
The president of the government has a brother named David Sánchez, who is a musician, who arrives in Spain and mysteriously, not us, but the judge in the Provincial Council of Badajoz, controlled by the PSOE, creates an ad hoc position for him to be the head of the Performing Arts Office, a newly created position paid as a high-ranking official with 46,000 euros annually. And this gentleman gets this position, gets paid, but does not go to work.
And David, can you please explain to me why no one could do it yesterday? What is the Office of Performing Arts?
Excuse me?
The Office of Performing Arts.
Yes.
What is it?
He neither has an office nor a computer. People, his colleagues, do not see him here. He says he does telework. However, he is often outside of Spain, even residing in Barça, residing in Portugal, a town that is 15 minutes from Badajoz.
Well, but even further, he has a friend who, that friend is an advisor at La Moncloa and decides that he wants to take his friend to Badajoz. And since he wants to take his friend to Badajoz, a procedure is also organized to award him a position. And this is the case of Luis María Carrero Pérez.
This investigation has also led to the indictment of the former president of the Provincial Council of Gallardo. This man is trying to evade justice. What he does when the judge proposes to go to trial is to seek immunity by getting into within the party, forcing other deputies to resign from their seats to protect himself legally.
By the way, we are also going to regenerate the political life of this country. Do you know what we are going to approve next Friday in the Council of Ministers? We are going to approve the constitutional reform to end legal immunities.
Amazing, now Sanchez is able to pull all the strings, no? The story would be that Mr. Google, Mr. Indra, and Mr. Telefonica decided, without any pressure, recommendation, or favor from Moncloa, to design software for a chair that Begoña got from the Complutense, without having a degree. I don't know, it sounds like a private scam. And brother too. He arrived to work, well, maybe not work. He arrived to get paid by the Provincial Council of Badajoz without the qualifications for the position they give him. And when they get caught, the president of the Provincial Council who gives him that position skips over many who were ahead of him to enter the regional government and thus gain immunity. They will have to explain to me very slowly that Sanchez knew nothing, just like they have to explain very slowly all the stream of corruption that follows.
Uncle Bernie, the mediator case is already. Nothing is known. It has become something distant, right? It hasn't reached where it needed to go. It got stuck at an intermediate step. And then Uncle Bernie, he was just someone passing by. Well, no.
He is a deputy named Bernardo Fuentes Corbelo, alias Tito Berni, a deputy of the Congress, who starts consuming prostitution, cocaine. He starts giving public contracts to people from his circle. He teams up with a civil guard, General Espinosa Fuentes, who also helps him secure these contracts, whom he bribes.
Well, Tito Berni ended up with a safe of the chief inspector who is investigating, where apparently the evidence is stolen from the police station and where he is going to be imposed a 1-year sentence. Who has decapitalized the UDF? If the civil guard had handled it and the evidence hadn't been lost, would he now be facing prosecution for 1 year or 10?
The famous Coldo case begins in the Central Court of Instruction number 2. And what does it consist of? Well, the same, very simple. There is a lot of money involved, as during the pandemic, masks needed to be bought, or later the famous tests, PCR, and then there are a series of companies that are awarded by the administration from different sectors of the administration, purchases, tenders, in exchange for kickbacks, for very large sums of money. From that matter, another arises, which is the Abalos case, currently in the Supreme Court. Why? Because in the end, Abalos' involvement in this whole mass business is seen, and the Supreme Court then initiates a series of investigations, with the collaboration, logically, of the UCO, and much more emerges from there. Because he had friends, that he brought into the administration, they were given contracts, they didn't go to work, but of course it starts to be seen, that he gets paid in villas, or that he gets paid in apartments, or that he gets paid in different ways. And from there, the investigation gets more complicated, and it is seen that they are also involved in awarding construction contracts, and through this means of awarding contracts, another person appears, the one who succeeded Abalos in the General Secretariat of the Socialist Party, which is Sánchez S.A. Sánchez S.A. also received commissions for awarding construction contracts.
Today I am going to talk about Super Sánchez S.A.
He's a person who has always been with me, has all my, trust, and is one of my closest collaborators.
Repeat, the provincial general secretaries, the general secretaries and such, the only one they can talk to in order to say something to Pedro is Santos. It's true that he does what Pedro tells him, period.
Thank you very much. Aldama, 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 Aldama.
Aldama.
Pay me the fee, okay?
In all these procedures, through Aldama, as the European Rescue is involved because the European rescue appears tangentially in the matter of Begoña, because Begoña begins her relationship through with the Complutense and first goes through Bacalúa, where Hidalgo is, well, but the European rescue is also the famous Delci's gold, but it's also in the mask.
Victor Aldama goes last December to the Supreme Court and hands over a little paper, in which a series of public works concessions are listed, where allegedly commissions had been distributed through contractors belonging to different territories controlled by different people within the PSOE, who allegedly were entitled to commissions based on the territory where they were delivered. Victor Aldama sneaked into the last office of the Ministry of Transport. Victor Aldama, there have also been photos in which there are photos that have been published in El Confidencial where he was on Ferrer Street. Victor Aldama was the one who helped La Suegra Delcy Rodriguez arrive in Spain. The UJO has found documentation of Victor Aldama in which he apparently collaborated in moving a few dozen gold bars from Caracas to Moscow, passing through Zambia. All it means is the Venezuelan regime needs capital, Delcy needs to collect her money, an intermediary is needed. Moscow needs gold. Victor Aldama was in provisional detention within the famous hydrocarbon scheme. The hydrocarbon scheme, among other things, involved the creation of multiple companies within Spain. Initially, the Central Operative Unit suspects, and all allegedly, I reiterate, to move the money that was obtained in that fraudulent way. They had front men. There are companies where it has been shown that they were associated with people, among them the one who negotiated the purchase of the famous chalet in Alcaidesa, where José Luis Ábalos stayed. The person who negotiated it had been Pedro Sánchez's driver in the 2017 primary elections. Victor Aldama, who had also been hired by Huawei to be one of the representatives in Spain, had also been hired by Air Europa in a bailout with public money. He was an advisor, meaning this work is legal, the company had hired him. In a bailout where it has been shown that Begoña Gómez also played an active role. Victor Aldama, as they have mentioned on television, the José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero had been on his jet to travel between the Dominican Republic and apparently Caracas. I think the connections are quite clear, right?
The hydrocarbons case, which is in Central Court number 5, there, in addition, there are several popular accusations. We handle the defense of all the popular accusations. What happens there? Xavi Poro, Babu Nabano, Borsauguier Felipe. The same thing, a lot of money involved. Why a lot of money involved? Because the sale of hydrocarbons generates many profits by not paying the VAT. But of course, the Garashamo, the hydrocarbons start because they obtain a license from the ministries in office. And a license, there would be suspicion that it was obtained through political favoritism by paying commissions. But in that procedure, both in that of hydrocarbons and in the Coldo case, because it also tangentially appears that there is a lady, Pano, who takes cash to Ferraz. Then there may be illegal financing, of the PSOE, or there are suspicions. Those suspicions are further confirmed or reaffirmed in the Supreme Court, the Ábalos case, which has ceased to be the Ábalos case to become the PSOE case.
The time has come to recap and try to explain this tremendous scheme. All settled, of course, allegedly, as in this house we are very much for the presumption of innocence. A guy who comes out of nowhere and has no significant merit marries a girl whose family makes a living from brothels and gay saunas where Villarejo and the Fat One recorded influential figures to extort them. With this resume, he manages to reach the carpet 3 times by replacing an elected official and arrives at the General Secretariat of the Socialist Party after primaries that raised doubts about their fairness. But watch out! He gets kicked out in 2016 and still manages to return in other primaries, even more tainted than the first ones, after a trip that no one knows who financed in a Peugeot 407 full of crooks. Since he arrives at Moncloa thanks to a motion of no confidence when his parliamentary strength was 85 miserable deputies, he needs the support of terrorists, fugitive separatists, and those who, according to him, would not let him sleep peacefully. And from the very first minute, he puts the state apparatus at his feet, placing party people in the highest positions of power. Justice, media, the Ministry of the Interior, Foreign Affairs, all at his service. And everything is connected, everything. From justice, he ensures pardons, pushes through outrageous laws, and silences anyone who dares to oppose him. The media will only talk about how good he is and how immensely bad the mega ultra turbo right is. From the interior, he will be able to suppress any protest and above all control the police that should investigate certain crimes that may involve him, his people, or his partners, both Spanish and foreign. Exterior also has its crucial importance. China and Huawei, Morocco, or the position between Iran and Israel are nothing compared to what comes to us from Venezuela through José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. But there would also be a connection between Delcy Rodriguez, the suitcases, and the bailout of Air Europa, due to the possible mediation of Begoña with her very good friend Javier Hidalgo. All this is recounted by Victor de Aldama, who truly is involved in everything and is also starting to tell us about the hydrocarbons case, one of the biggest corruption schemes in European history. And where the apparatus of the state does not reach, the tentacles of the sewers appear. Lere Diaz was in charge of finding information to bring down the judges and civil guards of the UCO who were giving her a hard time, allegedly handing a USB drive to Cerdán with the sauna recordings so that it would be brought to the attention of the prosecutor's office, which he also controls. But also Lere held a high position in Correos, which if we combine with the control of the Central Electoral Board and Indra and the background of the last PSOE primaries, well, if it walks like a duck, is white and quacks. And finally, there's the sleazy and the shovel thief. From Ferraz, Avalos and Cerdán controlled the party and mediated in many contract awards and public works, with the addition of prostitutes, friends placed in public organizations, and cocaine. Cocaine always appears. The head of this immense corruption scheme seems clear. Or not, according to some, because the name of José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero is starting to appear everywhere, but also that of Bono, Pepe Blanco, Acento. The issue is that there are too many people involved here to point to just one name, Sánchez or Zapatero. Zapatero or Sánchez, it doesn't matter who is number one, it's the number one of something. And that something...
What is it?
Is that Sanchismo a symptom of a greater evil called the PSOE? Yes, we must agree that it is.
I find it sad how I perceive on the street that everyone is talking about Avalos' prostitutes. Because it's true that things in life seem like Torrente, Avalos, who was born in a town called Torrente. But to me that seems, while repugnant, it doesn't seem like the core of the matter. The core issue is political corruption and economic corruption.
Seeing the tentacular corruption, the moral collapse, the assault on institutions, I believe that the problem beyond Sanchez is the PSOE. I mean, Sanchez cannot be explained without this PSOE, and this can only be fixed if we get rid of the PSOE.
Here, what we want to talk about is the corruption of the PSOE. The corruption of the PSOE is a moral corruption.
The Sanchismo is the PSOE of all time, but adapted to the leader of the moment, right? Like in the era of González, the socialism ended in Felipismo.
It's the same as always. Felipe González also has Dominican nationality, right?
What happened from Files until now is an increase and escalation of corruption, having learned over many years how they have to do it.
This political system is an organism, and like any organism, there is a principle that leads you to defend your own life. It's the organism of self-defense. Well then, what happens? That this organism will have to defend itself. And of course, this is based on the existence of an alternation in power or a fondness for alternation, because often in the essentials, there is no alternation at all. So of course, is there going to be a real prosecution of the illegal financing of the PSOE that would bring down the system? Or is it going to come to Pedro Sánchez leaves from here to give the appearance that this system works? Because if you continue like this, at the end there will be no choice but to keep going forward and touch. And of course, many things can many things can happen here.
The thing with the PSOE is like the bankruptcy of Deutsche Bank, the too big to fall thing. It seems that because it is such an institutional party, there is fear of it falling, and attempts are made to save it with those messages. Greece moved forward with PASOK, or France continues with the Socialist Party, reduced to the same expression.
Those messages about the good PSOE always make me suspicious.
Looking at the history of the PSOE, where is the good PSOE? I mean, when they talk about the Socialist Party, they tell you honesty, I don't know what. Well, the history of the Socialist Party is quite a dark history from the year 34. I won't go into detail up to our days. It's a history that has been marked by blood, marked by death, and marked by corruption.
Is there a possibility of the PSOE being declared illegal?
I would call for the outlawing of the Socialist Party.
They have been dipping into the till since they became a party. They have a criminal history behind them that begins at the start of the last century, which includes coups, much bloodshed, and even during democratic or supposedly democratic government periods. Some, like the Republican persecution that ended the lives of people for thinking differently or simply for being religious. It has 40 years of absolute silence due to cowardice, which are the 40 years of the Francoist dictatorship, where they were neither present nor expected. And then suddenly they reappear in democracy, elevated by all the economic elites of this country to announce a new world to us. No? Look, let them fool their father. The PSOE is pure moral degradation that is generally followed by economic degradation and, of course, a cultural scenario that leads us to a world very difficult to accept. A world very difficult to accept because it is a world that clashes head-on with everything we built to become the most free and prosperous civilization humanity has ever known.